The views expressed on this episode are those of the guest and not necessarily those of myself and the Tristan Law Show. Welcome to the Tristan Law Show, where I introduce you to the personalities in and out of the pro wrestling ring. The unique part is you don't have to be a pro wrestling fan to enjoy this podcast. If you don't believe me, well, I guess you've got to stick around until the end to find out. I am Tristan Law, and I hope that you like what I'm doing because I'm doing what you like. Did you miss me? Of course you didn't, because you still got to hear my voice last episode in the Best of Tristan Law Show Volume 1. What did you think? Did you learn anything about me? Did you learn anything about the Tristan Law Show? What was your favorite moment? Reach out and let us know on social media. Visit tristanlawshow.com to snag all of our social media links. Don't forget to tag us, and don't forget to make your post or profile public so that we can see it and share it if we like it. I hope your Thanksgiving was great and you all played by the rules. You know what rules I'm talking about. But let me tell you about mine. Mine was really low-key, and I stuck with my meal plan, but I did have a piece of cake or two or three. But it's Thanksgiving. Don't judge me. Don't judge me because I'm still on the right track. This episode, I'm going to introduce you to Matt Lynch. Matt Lynch is not a pro wrestler, but he wanted to be. He's a former police officer with the NYPD. That's right. He is affiliated with the Knights of Columbus. Matt is a long-time pro wrestling fan, and he is also the official ring announcer for East Coast Pro Wrestling, based out of New Jersey. Matt sits with me, and we talk about police car chases, working with NYPD after 9/11, how he became a police officer, and how, although he didn't become a professional wrestler, how he managed to infiltrate the professional wrestling business. This is a long interview, so I'm not going to keep you. This is going to be really short. But thank you so much for being here. Don't go anywhere, because when I get back, I'll be joined by the official ring announcer for ECPW and my friend, Matt Lynch. I am Tristan Law, and this is the Tristan Law Show. Don't go anywhere, because I'll be right back.
Hello to all of you Tristan Law Show podcast listeners. This is Frank Mandolini. You may not recognize this voice. I am the Italian podcaster who talks about the business side of wrestling. Yeah, I know, it's quite niche. But if you look for last minute wrestling podcast on all of your social media and wherever you get your podcast, you've been amazed to find interviews with people such as Rob Van Dam or Matthew Gregg from Botchamania and many others, so you get to know many aspects of the wrestling business that normally you don't hear in wrestling podcasts. Because let's face it, who wants to hear another guy talk about Monday Night Raw? Yeah, me neither. So guys, go to lmwpodcast.com or search for LMW Podcast everywhere in the interweb. And remember guys, this is Frank Mandolini from the Last Minute Wrestling Podcast, and you stay safe.
Welcome back to the Tristan Law Show. I mean, you've been waiting for it, so now you got it. And I want to introduce you to my next guest. He is a former member of the NYPD. He's an active member of the Knights of Columbus and the official ring announcer for East Coast Professional Wrestling. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to Matt Lynch. What's going on, Matt? How are you? Welcome to the Tristan Law Show.
How are you, Tristan? Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm doing good, and I'm glad that you're here. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day being here. It's not easy trying to coordinate everybody's schedules to do this, and I wholeheartedly appreciate the time today. But how's everything been going for you and your family doing COVID? Everybody's good?
Thank God everybody's safe. Everybody's doing well. Get a little tired of wearing a mask, but hey, listen, gotta wear the mask.
I agree. You have to wear the mask. The thing about the mask is that I saw somebody put on social media the other day that the mask shouldn't be stylish, that it should be PPE and shouldn't be stylish at all. But I'm like, wait a minute. When I'm in the fire department, we get like these fancy color-looking hoods that we cover our heads with when we go in the fire. I'm like, if you have to wear the mask, why not wear a mask with style?
Exactly. Looking good is half the battle.
That is true. I mean, I'm sure Doc Brown could have built a time machine out of anything, but he chose a DeLorean.
That's right.
So knowing that
he didn't use a Nissan Sentra.
I mean, he probably wouldn't have been able to get to 88 miles per hour to see some serious shit. Knowing that you're affiliated with the Knights of Columbus, I want to ask you, because I'm sure a lot of my listeners don't know about this organization, and I know a little bit about the organization because I've wrestled in a lot of those buildings, but what is the Knights of Columbus organization?
The Knights of Columbus is a Catholic gentlemen's organization. It was started in 1882 by a parish priest, Father Michael J. McGivney. The reason he started the Knights of Columbus was because in those days, especially in New Haven, Connecticut, when the breadwinner of the Catholic family died, the family was often left destitute and the children were orphaned and things were rather terrible. So he came up with the organization as a way of getting coverage for the gentlemen of his parish and expanding upon that so that when one of them passed away, the family had an income coming in. That was basically the premise of it. He needed to find a way that Catholic families could protect themselves when the breadwinner died. And then it grew from there, and it grew into what we have today, which is 2 million members in their families. We have a great deal of charities and social programs, and the men do have a social aspect to it, but the money that we raise basically goes to helping the parishes, helping the local communities. We do coats for kids, we do blood drives, we do wheelchair missions, Warriors to Lords, where veterans who are disabled are taken to Lords in the hope of a cure. Mm-hmm. In Washingtonville, they do a Lords program for young children, taking them to Lords for a cure. So there's a whole multitude of things, food pantries. It's limitless what they're able to do. But the way the Knights of Columbus actually works, the money that's collected from everybody's dues can run the Knights of Columbus for about 3 days a year. The insurance program, the proceeds from the insurance program runs the Knights of Columbus the rest of the year, which is amazing. So it's amazing how a life insurance company is able to do what it does for the life insurance, but it also is able to do all the big ticket items in our charities. Basically, let's take a look at the Haiti earthquake. Okay, there was a great number of people who needed prosthetics, medical care, wheelchairs. The Knights of Columbus sent an enormous amount of money to help with that. Even Hurricane Katrina, we go back to there. $10 million from the Knights of Columbus went to aid in Hurricane Katrina. Mm-hmm. And very interesting is after 9/11, all the policemen from NYPD, Port Authority policemen, and all the FDNY members who were killed in the Trade Center, whether they were Catholic or not, whether they were members of the Knights of Columbus or not, their family received the death benefit from the Knights of Columbus.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
It was getting within 2 weeks after 9/11, all those deceased first responders, their families received a check.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That blew my mind. How did you get into the Knights of Columbus?
It's funny, when I retired from police work, I was actually working at the Thayer Hotel. I worked there for about 1.5 years. I was working in the Zulu Lounge. But when you leave police work, you kind of lose your vocation. And, police work was my vocation. It was what I wanted to do from the time I was 5 years old. So from age 20 to age 40, it was my vocation.
Right.
But you retire and you feel like you're not making that difference anymore. And it was suggested to me by a few friends of mine, more than a few friends of mine, hey, you might like this, you might like this. And I kept putting it off. When I was a policeman, I kept putting it off. And then something just made me look into it a little more. And I saw what it was, and I saw what they did, and I saw the people who were involved in it. And I said, wow, this is something I'd like to get involved in. And I joined. And then like the old Norelco razor commercial, where you say, I liked it so much, I bought the company. Mm-hmm. I liked it so much, I started working for the company. I basically fell into the business.
That's your
business
gimmick.
Aspect of it, it's separate. But I liked it so much, I got into the business end of it. Wow. And I've been doing that for 8 years now.
So you said about the Knights of Columbus that it started back in the 1800s as an
1882.
1882 to take care of families that lost the breadwinners. So knowing how society has changed, how do they take care of families now in 2020?
A huge part of that is me going out as the insurance agent and visiting with Catholic families. And most of them, the husband is already a member of the Knights of Columbus. And I do a full needs analysis, do a full financial background check on them, and see what they need the most and where they need it. If they listen, I can help them. So I try to get those families insured. I make it as economical as possible, and I try to address their needs as best I can. So, and at the same time, I get them to become involved in these councils, more involved in their parish, more involved in their community.
So from what I'm understanding and from what you're telling me, the Knights of Columbus, for a Catholic person, it brings them closer to the church.
It does. It does. If you open yourself up to it, it does. It's become more of a family organization as time is going on. The programs are becoming more and more family oriented, and which is a very good thing, because without your wife and children involved, it's immense. It's much better now having the wives and children involved. Much better.
How does someone become a member of the Knights of Columbus?
You need to be a Catholic male, and you need to be at least 18 years of age. And they would like it that you are somebody who's considered a practical Catholic, someone who goes to church, follows the laws of the church, and is a reasonably good person.
They're not talking about somebody that only shows up on Easter and Christmas.
Well, you would hope that if they join and they didn't do that, that joining would make them, it would edify them into becoming closer to the church. We'll put it that way. You would want it that, and I've had this happen, men would join that weren't exactly close to the church, but once they were there and they saw that what the work the men were doing and that it was okay to pray with the other men, that they would suddenly on their own become closer to the church.
So to take advantage of that life insurance program that you were talking about, to where you are a representative for that life insurance program, what are some of the minimum qualifications that somebody has to have in order to take part in that?
For that, you have to be a member of the Knights of Columbus, and then the member and his wife and children are eligible for the benefits. That's how that works.
So are you only able to offer this insurance service, you personally, to somebody in New York, or is it anywhere?
I'm licensed in the state of New York, so I do New York. I'm for the most part, I'm in the Hudson Valley, and it's basically those Catholic families in my area.
So if somebody wanted to reach out to you to talk about, and they were in the Knights of Columbus, how would they reach out to you?
If they're in Orange County, there's myself and one other agent that works in Orange County, and we have an honor system, so it would be between our two locations. But you can get me at Matthew, MATTHEW, .Lynch, LYNCH, at KOFC.org. You get me there, or my cell number, which is 845-541-9447. The whole business runs off my cell.
Matt, let me ask you this. I got a really good question. I found this on the Knights of Columbus website.
Yeah.
One man can do good. A fellowship can do a greater good. This quote is related, obviously, to the Knights of Columbus. What does that mean to you?
Basically, what that means is, yes, one man can make a difference, but if we work together, we're that much stronger. You can push your car if it's in neutral, but it'll be slow. But if you got 5-6 guys helping, it's going to go a little quicker.
I feel that. I understand that. And I'm sure that teamwork, that camaraderie actually came into play a lot when you were a member of the NYPD.
Absolutely. A very wise man once told me that everybody's got to be rowing the boat in the same direction.
Again, you were a member of New York's finest, the NYPD. That was a job that I wanted when I was a kid. You know, it's not a surprise, listeners. I am black. And growing up as a black kid in New York City, the NYPD wanted people that looked like me because, you know, I would be able to relate more to what went on in the street. And I always wanted to be a cop. And sometimes I kick myself in the ass now, Matt, that I never actually took the opportunity. I remember being a kid, 16 years old. You used to be able to go to NYPD.whatever, and you can take a mock test to prepare for the written test. And this was before they were giving the test on computers. And I used to love taking that test. I used to watch Cops. I remember my mom went to law school. She had a law book. I remember reading it and learning about the law. But, you know, for me, being a police officer, you just, in some states, it's a professional job to where you need college. And for me, I'm not a fan of writing essays, and I'm not saying that kids should not go to school. Kids should. Education is different. But it was something that I didn't get to do. So for you, what made you want to get into that line of work?
I wanted to do it from the time I was 5 years old. My dad was a school custodian in the South Bronx, but all of his friends were cops. They would leave him stuff when they retired, nightsticks, blackjacks, and tell him, hey, this is for Matt when he grows up. Give it to Matt when he grows up. And I was just around it. I was mesmerized by it. I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And I mean, I watched Adam 12, I watched Chips, I watched Starsky and Hutch. It's just, there's sometimes it's hard to explain. There was just something there that I always wanted to do that, but it was more the people aspect, you know, and I really just, I'm a people person. The way to approach becoming a police officer is you need to A, want to help people, and B, you need to like people. You really need to like people and want to help people. And the NYPD is probably the most diverse place to work in the entire world than it was even 30 years ago when I started. Mm-hmm. And once you were in, you were family. The first time after I took the test and passed the test, I went for my character investigation.
I love those.
I remember going to the 49 precinct in Eastchester, and you had to wear a suit. You had to look good. I got a suit on. I'm 18 years old. I walk in the door. They line everybody up, and this Asian detective comes walking down the hall, and he had a Brooklyn accent, and he walks down the hall. One guy's wearing a sweater. He goes, weren't you told to wear a jacket today? Oh, whoa. He goes, get out, go home.
Boom, done.
Goes to the next guy. Didn't we tell you no newspapers? Get out, go home. And he just started picking guys off the line. They put us in a room. He stands at the podium, and he points at the patch, the New York City Police Department patch. It was a big sticker on the podium. Mm-hmm. And he says, if you want to wear this, you have to earn it. You have to do what we say, go where we say, do what we want, because it's a very hard job. And if you can't learn to do what you're told, you're not going to be here. And they had a weeding out process. They wanted to get rid of the wise guys, the lazy people. It was just very different.
Right.
You know, but they instilled in you right away that you had to earn this, that it was an honor to actually wear that patch. Because the way they looked at it, those old timers, once you were in, you became part of a family. Mm-hmm. Didn't matter where you came from, who you were. At that time, that was the one job where you could get a high school, and you had a high school diploma or a GED. You could come in with a GED or a high school diploma and end up as the commissioner. Mm-hmm. You know, back in those days, you could. They changed it since, but where else could you do that? Where else could a kid that had no money and an okay education be able to do something like that?
Right.
So a lot of people live the American dream on that job. I had a fellow that was in my academy class that he was born here and his family moved back to Mexico. And they were dirt poor. When he was 18, he wanted to leave Mexico, come back here. His father laughed at him, said, there's nothing for you in New York. Why do you even want to go? He took whatever money he had, got here, ended up homeless pretty quickly, wound up in a homeless shelter, got a job in the homeless shelter, worked himself up, became the security guard in the homeless shelter, and then became a cop. And, you know, married, raised a family. I mean, the job gave him the opportunity. Well, he had the opportunity just coming back to America, but the job enabled him to create a better life for himself. And he was a very good cop because he came from nothing. He understood people.
What would you tell somebody that wants to be in law enforcement today? What encouragement would you give them?
You have to want to be there. You have to like people. You need to be respectful of people. You need to realize that people have rights. You need to realize that you're there to protect people, to help people, but you're also there to do your job and enforce the law.
Of course.
You have to wear many, many hats during the course of a day. It is also like an acting job. There were nights when I worked in the 3-2 in Central Harlem where I would answer 30 jobs in a night, 30 jobs in 8 hours. But in those 30 jobs, you're going to aided cases where people are hurt. You're going to family disputes. You could be going to a homicide. You could be going to all these different things. And you have to be all things to all people. You have to treat everybody different. You have to treat the situation different. So you need to be able to adapt quickly. You need to be able to have your adrenaline going up and down all day. And you need to be even-tempered. You can't lose your temper. It's very hard to do, but you can't lose your temper.
Right. Because you always got to remain in control.
Yeah. And the funny thing that people that aren't in that world don't understand is two things. Number one, they go, gee, when the officer pulls me over, why is he so mean, so stern, so this, so that? Well, that's because the officer, when he gets out of the car, has to remember all the things he needs to do to stay safe when he's walking up to your car.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he's standing a certain way. That's why he's looking at your car a certain way, because he has a family to go home to.
Of course.
So, yes, you may have run a red light, you may have done nothing, you may have done whatever, but basically he's hoping to see your hands, see everything that's in that car, see your keys on your dashboard, and then have a pleasant conversation with you to get this done the right way.
Right.
And that's the way that is. The other thing is people have a misnomer. They'll go to, let's say, a homicide scene, and they'll see over in the corner, you'll see 5, 6 cops talking and laughing a little, like, oh, that's horrible. They're saying they're talking there, they're laughing. Well, no, that's just, you become immune to some of this stuff after a while.
Right.
And you have to cope with it. People don't realize that at the end of the day, you take off your Superman suit and you got to go home. You got to go home. You got to become a regular person again. And that's, not everybody can do that. That's hard to do.
You see, I got a couple of friends that are in law enforcement, and I have, one of them, actually both of them, I worked with them in different capacities. One, we worked at Walmart together. We were assistant managers, and he's actually a cop in my town. And one guy, we actually volunteered at the fire department together, and he went through and put himself through the academy, and he went to the school. And the thing that I always tell people is that there's good cops and there's bad cops. There's good lawyers, there's bad lawyers. There's good teachers and there's bad teachers. You can't group everybody into one, and you can't let everybody speak for everybody else. I know it's hard to do that, but like at the end of the day, like my friends, they're all married and they have kids and getting married. I don't want to have to be the one that's at their funeral looking at their wife or their girlfriend, fiance, kids crying their eyes out. So it's definitely a tough job. But Matt, I want to know, while being a police officer in the NYPD, tell everyone one time where you really felt like you made a difference.
Oh, there was plenty of times, but it was in different ways. Probably one of the things that I remember was I had a kid when I was working at Central Harlem. He was just getting himself into trouble over silly stuff. Not arrestable stuff, but stupid stuff. He would just do stupid stuff every day.
Like what?
Just mischief. A hubcap here, silly things.
Right.
Break a window, just hang around with the wrong kids, just stupid stuff. And one day I had just had enough. And I said, we have to fix this. Yeah, his grandmother was raising him. His parents weren't around. And he was a good kid, a smart kid. There was no direction. Mm-hmm. So I grabbed him by the back of the collar and I dragged him a block down to the Associated Supermarket on Lenox Avenue. Or no, I'm sorry, it was on 7th Avenue. Right? And I walk into the supermarket and I drag him in and I knew the manager and I said, you need to give this kid a job. And he goes, look, we're not hiring. I says, you don't understand me. I says, if he doesn't have something to do, he's going to find something wrong to do. So I'm not leaving till you find something for him to do. You've got to help me. Talks to the kid for 5 minutes, gives him something to do, made him a stock boy. That was the difference. He had to have something to do. Somebody had to take an interest in him and give him some responsibility, show him that you can make an honest dollar. Mm-hmm. That's a difference maker right there. Because you know what? Then he wasn't getting into trouble. He wasn't hanging around with the wrong guys. Now he's with people that are a little older than him. Somebody's giving him direction. Be back here tomorrow at this time. You're making money. That makes the difference. And that's one of the things when you do community policing, you have to focus on is you can't fix everything, but you look to find the things you can fix. All this kid needed was somebody to take an interest in him.
Right.
He was looking for attention, but he would have got negative attention from doing stupid stuff. I don't want to see that kid get killed. I want to see him go out and make a life for himself. There's enough people out there killing each other. This kid, he was a good kid. You could just tell he was a good kid. He needed somebody to point him in the right direction.
Whatever happened to that kid?
Last I saw, he was still working there and he was going to school and he was doing what he was supposed to and his grandmother was happy.
Wow.
That's almost 30 years ago. So hopefully he's running that store now or he's an executive somewhere.
For me, growing up in the Bronx, and I always tell people that it's really easy to become a product of your environment. But just like you said, I
grew up in the Bronx.
Oh, you did? Very easy. Yeah, it's easy because there's a lot of, there's some crazy things that I did. And I know my mom's going to be listening to this. So I'm going to out myself right now. So one of the things that we used to do is that if we wanted to get from Webster and we want to go down to 167, what we do is we'd walk on the Metro North tracks. And when the train or when the Amtrak would come, we'd run to the other side and get out the way. Like some of the dumb things that we did when we were kids. I remember one time we cut school and my friend fell. We jumped over a fence running from the cops because the cops, the truant cops come to get you. and he jumped over a fence and he stabbed his foot with a piece of our metal when we were running from the cops, and we didn't leave him, so we all limped back and we hid from the cops. But we lied to his mom and told him that we were playing in the park and he got hurt. But but we had programs in my neighborhood, in my building. There was a program that would take us to places where our parents couldn't afford. The Bronx Zoo. Our parents couldn't take us because they had to work. We went to Six Flags. We went to the museum. We went to the aquarium. I learned how to write a resume in all these places, as a kid. And I always feel if I never had those things to nurture me or somebody taking a special interest in me, I could have been a piece of crap on the street like everybody else.
Yeah, one of the problems in New York City is people don't take advantage of the programs. I mean, I grew up in Norwood near Montefiore Hospital in the North Bronx.
Yep, by Gun Hill.
And yes, I grew up right off of Gun Hill Road.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the programs they had was in this parks department was the tennis lessons. And I remember my mom saying, "You're going to go take tennis lessons." I'm like, "Oh, this is awful. I don't want to play tennis. Tennis is for weirdos, this and that." And she took me there, and I was with all the kids from the neighborhood, and I started to like it. I started to enjoy it. And they took me all over the city to tournaments. I was a terrible tennis player. I was all right. I could get by. But that wasn't the case. The case was, I went to the lessons, and then they took us down to Central Park to play. They took us to all these different parks to play against other teams. Every year, you got a couple of free tennis rackets. Mm-hmm. They had the Vitas Gerulaitis Foundation that they supplied all these kids with tennis rackets. So you got a new tennis racket every year. It was great. And you met kids from other parts of the city, and you got a little more exposure, and it was good. Those programs are great. People don't take advantage of them. That's part of the problem.
All right, so you said that you're from the Bronx, and I'm not born and raised in the Bronx, but I wear the Bronx badge all over my chest. I was born in Brooklyn, but I don't remember Brooklyn. I moved to the Bronx at 10 years old, and I am Bronx through and through. I love the Bronx. And I'm going to ask you a question, Matt, because this is a test that I give everybody to see if they're really from the Bronx. It's 2 questions, and I want to see how you do. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Where is the best place to get a gyro in the Bronx?
Oh, Gyro King off of Fordham Road.
And Walton Avenue, my man. Okay.
Oh, yeah. I spent many a night at Gyro King.
Gyro King was
walking distance. You can get the Gyro King.
That's right. That's right. I used to live on 123rd and Walton Avenue. We used to have to walk a couple blocks down to
Preston Avenue there, yeah.
Yep. I used to love walking down there to come get me a gyro. All right. So that you're doing good. You're doing good. Let me give you the next question. If you're really from the Bronx, when is the best day to go to the Bronx Zoo?
Oh, Wednesday was the best day because that was the free day, because that's when we used to go a lot of times. But it was quieter on Tuesday. If we had the money to pay, we'd go on Tuesday and pay, because then if you went on Wednesday on the free day, you had to pay to go into Wild Asia. You had to pay to go on the Skyline. You had to pay for all that stuff. So they still got you. So you had to kind of weigh it out a little, depending on what you wanted to do.
Ding, 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 ladies and gentlemen. We can officially say that you are from the Bronx. Back to policing a little bit. In your opinion, what was the best part for you when you were a police officer?
Oh, the uncontrollable belly laughs I used to get every day with all the crazy stuff you see. Just the laughter and being with the fellas and being on the road. So I got to admit, it was fun playing bumper cars with the police car. That was fun. Fun driving fast. It's fun. I cannot lie. It is fun. It is fun. There is nothing more fun in the world than driving that car 90 miles an hour with the lights and sirens, and your adrenaline's pumping. And after you're there a while, you're able to have the radio turned up all the way and the police radio turned up all the way and enjoy. I mean, I can remember getting into car chases and yelling at my partner, "Find me something to listen to." And, you got an FM radio. It's not like now where these kids they could have an iPod and go, "Dude, I got car chase music." You couldn't do that back then. Once in a while you'd luck out in Highway Star or something to be on while you're zooming after somebody,
So wait a minute. So you're telling me, Matt, that when you were chasing somebody that you told your partner to put on music, what would you prefer for him to put on for you?
Oh, just usually rock and roll. But one partner I had, he was a musician, so he would listen to the Latin music all day.
Uh-huh.
And if it was the opposite, he was driving, we would be going 90 miles an hour. He's listening to the merengue, and he's singing along with it while we're driving. Right. If he was the passenger and we had that on, he's playing piano on on the dashboard because he was a piano player.
Huh. Okay. That's fun. That's pretty cool.
It is an adrenaline rush. Hey, listen, it is what it is. It's a massive adrenaline rush sometimes. When you're doing good and you're out there and you're doing your job, you get that adrenaline rush.
You know, I would never, growing up in New York City, I would never imagine a police chase in New York City. Like, where would you even go? Like, you go like a quarter of a block and then you get pulled over?
It's hysterical. You can only imagine people driving into the Oval and buzzing around in the park and making donuts. I've had car chases that went through Big Cortlandt Park, you know, up and down Washington Parkway, the highways. Even when I worked in Washington Heights, car chases up and down Broadway. I mean, it was just hysterical.
Wow.
You know, have room, we'll travel. I mean, I've seen some crazy, crazy stuff with that. I actually was in one. There was a, all the way back in the end of 1991 or so. There was one night that a lot of guys had called out because there was some big to-do downtown. And I'm a rookie, and a guy I was working with was also a rookie. We wound up in a car together. We answered, I think, 35, 36 jobs that night. And the 3-2 was a tiny precinct. But it was just utter chaos. It was a Friday night, and it was just chaos all night. And there was a couple of shootings. There was a lot of robberies, a lot of crazy stuff. But this one particular job, one officer's calling for help, and there was a shooting, and somebody got hit. So now everybody and their mother is driving to that scene and has to get there right away because they need bodies. I remember I'm shooting down the wrong way on Bradhurst Avenue to get there. Another car is coming up this way, and we're both going to 145th Street. We both have to turn and go east, cut across 145th.
Right.
And I remember I was very good at this after all. You got to be able to cut the wheel just right to skin the back tires so that you can start up again. All I remember is I'm not expecting the other car coming from the other side, but I know that the light is green. I can see the traffic stop, so I'm going to zip and spin. As I'm spinning, I spin the wheel. The other guys, the cars are going like this, and now my partner's screaming. I'm looking, and the person's like, oh. And the cars just came right like this. I mean, to the point that the mirrors almost touched.
Oh, man.
And we both looked at each other. We looked at the guys in the other car. We laughed, and then boom, it was like Hot Wheels cars going down the track after that. Yeah, it's just, and then you just keep going. And it's funny how I remember that. It was just, I could see the whites of the eyes and the guys in the next car.
Wow, that's amazing. Like,
And then you laugh about it, and then you go home.
Right, because like if you live in New York City, you're picturing in your head like, how does this even work? And I could picture you saying that one is coming down the right way, you're going down the wrong way, and it's like you both are going to the same place. So like you kind of almost play chicken with each other.
It's almost like being in it's, you know, there's a lot of boredom involved, but you just never know when the action is going to come. Like new guys are coming, oh, I want action. I'm like, dude, enjoy while it's quiet, because when the action comes, it'll find you. But I had one, there was a shooting in a barber shop on 125th Street down in the 2-8 precinct. But it's one of those things that everybody's going, a couple of guys are shot, they're looking for guys with guns. My partner and I, we couldn't get a ride down there. It's about 10, 12 blocks away. Just how am I going to get down there? And it's calling for more guys. I was on a foot post. So I commandeered a cab. You're allowed to do that back then.
Oh, really?
Stop the livery cab, told them move over. Get in. And a nice guy, he's from West Africa, whatever, he was friendly enough. He moves over, my partner gets in the back seat, I start driving, and now I'm zooming down 7th Avenue. And I realized after I had to get through the first red light that when I hit the brakes, I'm just hitting steel. This car is an old Caprice. It's just beat to shit. And, you know, God knows even if he had a license. But every time I hit the brake, I'm zipping in and out of traffic. The guy sitting next to me, I look, he's clapping. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. He says to me as I make this wild spin to go down 125th, he goes, oh, this is great, like Steve McQueen movie. I really pissed myself in the car, but I thanked him. He was very good. He goes, no, thank you, please. He was so happy to have something cool to do. It was great. Yeah.
Did you at least give him a good tip?
I had to jump out of the car. I said, thank you, and I ran out of the car and never saw him again. Thank God he was there because they needed bodies down there. What are you going to do, you know?
That's so crazy that you commandeered a taxi cab. Like, I thought that was only something that they do in the movies.
Well, you can do that. I don't know anybody's done that in probably the last 20 years, but, you know, if you got to do something, you got it. Listen, I asked him very nicely. Like, listen, I got to borrow your car, you know?
While everyone is working behind me to make the Tristan Law Show better, I wanted to take a quick timeout to ask you to subscribe. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, rate the Tristan Law Show 5 stars and leave a review. Now, let's get back to the show. So 30 years ago, so 30 years ago would be like, what, 1990?
1990 is when I started.
So
1990.
1990 to when you retired.
2010.
2010. What are some of the differences between 1990 to 2010 in police work that you noticed?
Oh, a bunch of things. Well, the police car, the first police car I drove was a Plymouth Grand Fury, and it only had 2 switches. One clicked the lights on, one clicked the siren. And if you were working with an old timer, they tell you, don't touch the lights, don't touch the siren. Some of the old timers were a little crusty back then, you know. I worked with guys that were Korean War vets. You know, the Korean War vets, they were nice guys. They were taught by the World War II guys.
Right.
Then you had the Vietnam era guys. I learned a lot from them. They were very interesting individuals. They had a very different look on life. And then the generation after that, those were the guys that had to fight the crack war in the early 80s. And then I came right after that. So I had 3-4 generations of guys teaching me. I mean, I was working with guys that were, you know, I'm 20 years old. I'm in the car with a guy that's 60 sometimes. You know, I'm like the age of his grandkids. So I'll put it to you this way. Here's the way the difference works. The first time I went to court, I had to go to court for a summons that I wrote.
Right.
I wound up sitting next to this old guy, old cop, and he was getting ready to retire. He was almost 63. I'm 20 years old. I'm not even 21 yet.
Right.
And he goes, are you brand new? I said, yep. I said, I'm out, you know, about a month and a half, 2 months. He goes, I'm getting ready to retire. He goes, I want to tell you something, kid, and I want you to always remember this. I said, okay. He says, no matter what day you got here, it was better the day before. And I found, as in my travels, I moved about 15 times in 20 years. I used to move from unit to unit. If I didn't like a place, I'd go somewhere else. I had a lot of friends that I made along the way. If something good came up, I could go. But every place I went to, guys would tell me this. Yeah, it's good you're here now, but it sucks here now. You should have been here 4 years ago. Oh, this place was great then, but it sucks now. And then you get to the next unit, same shit. Oh, we used to have barbecues here. Yeah, but the new CO, he's a jerk, and we don't do that anymore. And it's every place I went.
Right.
You know, so, and it's just, that's the opinion. It's the way it goes. The last time I was in a patrol car was the day I was retiring. I hadn't actually been in uniform for 9 years. I worked in plain clothes the last 9 years of my career. But the day I was leaving, I did a midnight. And I was taking the train to Metro North home, and the guys go, hey, do you want to ride to the train today? I said, yeah, sure. I'll hop in. I hadn't been in a uniformed car since right after 9/11. So 2001 was the last time I was inside a uniformed police car. And at that time, they had gone from, you know, 2 switches to a little computer, nice light array, you know, bit better car.
Right.
Now I'm in this car that's got a laptop in it, all kinds of gadgets, and I'm going, what's that? You know, because I was doing investigations. I hadn't seen this stuff because I'm the guy walking around with a Hawaiian shirt. You never see me, you know?
Right.
And it was just very, very different. Things changed when they went from having revolvers to 9mm. When we had revolvers, all the guys, no matter what your background was, they all kind of revered John Wayne and Clint Eastwood because you only had 6 rounds in the gun, and so you practiced. You needed
those 6 rounds to count.
Once they were the 9mm, you got a lot more there. Guys weren't as interested. It was weird. I was trying to explain something to a rookie right before I retired, and he was asking me similar questions to you. And I was trying to relate to him Clint Eastwood and John Wayne, and he goes, who? And I'm sitting there, I'm going, okay, now it's time for me to go. It's time for me to go. I says, you never heard of Dirty Harry? He goes, I don't know what you're talking about. Are you kidding me? You don't know who John Wayne is? He goes, nope, no clue. I can't explain this to you. Sorry, sit down.
So obviously you were a police officer serving the city of New York doing 9/11. What was that day like for you?
I was actually home that day. I was at the first bombing in 93. I was the first bombing in 93. I was in Manhattan North Task Force that time. I was there about 20 minutes after that happened. And that was controlled chaos that day because nobody knew what they had. 9/11, I was actually home that day. It was my day off. We were taking one of my kids to a pediatrician appointment.
Right.
my wife turned on the TV, and I actually saw the second plane fly into the towers when she turned on the TV. She says, "Oh, there's a fire downtown." I looked at it, I was like, "Oh, this is going to be a bad day." Well, I wound up going into work in the evening, but there were so many guys downtown that there wasn't anybody to watch the store. So I actually wound up first 2 days staying up in Riverdale. I was working in the 50 at the time as a sergeant, and that's where I stayed for the first 2 days. I wasn't down there, I think, till the third day. And then I was down there a couple of days here and there, but a lot of the guys wanted to go down there because the restaurants had food and there was different things going on. So guys were fighting with each other to go down there. A lot of the time, I wound up staying uptown and just supervising patrol, just the way it worked. By November, I was off patrol. I was doing investigations.
That's so crazy that you were in Riverdale at the 50. That's the police station that's underneath the 1 train, right?
Right. So I've been a lot of places, but yeah, I was there for a while.
So I was going to Kennedy High School that day. So you and I were probably in the same neighborhood during that time. I went to Kennedy High School right there off on, Tibet Avenue or T-Bot Avenue?
Yeah, I worked in the 50 twice. I was there as a cop from 96 to the end of 98. And then I was back there, I'd say just a couple of months in 2001. I was there from like July to November in 2001.
So let's go back to your first day on the job, your very first day, all right? You're brand new. You don't have any much street experience. If you can go back to yourself right now, right? We're going to hop back in that DeLorean. We're going to hit 88 miles per hour because we're going to see some real serious stuff.
Okay.
What would you tell yourself if you can go back to that first day on the street? What would you say? Hey, Matt, tell yourself something.
Pay a lot more attention. Move a little slower. That's what I would tell myself. Take your time, do things a little slower. Pay more attention. Because as time goes on and those old timers leave and things change, you don't have those guys to rely on anymore. Right. When I got to the end of the road, I started so young, most of my friends were older than me, and most of them were retired before I was.
Right.
And as I got closer to the end, I had less people that I could pick up the phone and say, "Hey, what do I do with this? What do I do with that?" So the best thing you can do when you're new is pay attention, listen, learn, which I did, but I could have done a better job of that. That's the thing. First day on the job, first 2 days you're there, they don't even let you out of the building. You're doing paperwork and you've just got out of the academy, but the first 2 days they're just acclimating you to where you are.
Right.
By the third day, they're taking you out in a van. They're driving you out around a little bit. The first place they took me to was to the Polo Grounds.
Oh, in Manhattan.
And they showed me two things. They showed me the plaque where the approximate location of home plate was when the Giants were there and the Mets were there.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing they did, they took me to a parking spot on the south side of the Polo Grounds projects. And they showed me the spot where officers Piagentini and Jones were assassinated. And it was Ralph Piagentini, who was a white officer, and Waverly Jones, who was a black officer. And they were killed in a parking spot. And then their own guns were taken from them and they were shot again.
Wow. And
what made it unique is their assailants ran up through the back parking lot, up the wall to what's known as the Speedway, the big road behind the Polo Grounds, because that's a separate radio division, and they knew that. So when the calls for help were coming, everybody didn't know that these guys went up the stairs, were in a car, and were in New Jersey before anybody got to those two bodies.
Wow.
Yep. So that was lesson day one, and then they took me to a homicide right after that. So probably about 10 minutes after that, this poor woman was dragged up to a roof, stripped, bound, gagged with electrical tape, shot in the back of the head 5 times after she was raped and thrown off the roof. That's a hell of a first day. That's scary.
I know.
That makes you think on the ride home.
I know a guy I knew a guy that worked town police up here in Orange County, New York, and he told me that he was in my precinct. What was that? The 4-4 or the 4-7? One of those. And
where'd you live?
I lived on Walton Avenue and 183rd. I think my police station was down on
Valentine.
Oh,
that was you're on the border of the 4652 there, yeah.
So he told me, because like I said in the beginning, I was always interested in police work. It's my calling. If I could ever come back as something, I'd like to come back and be a police officer. But one of the things I asked him, I was like, hey, because he's about my age. I said, hey, what is it like working in the city in my old neighborhood? He goes, dude. He goes, what you see on TV is nothing compared to what really happens. No. He goes, because the news, they only tell you a certain part. He goes, there's people throwing off buildings every single day. He goes, because they won't report on the news because they still want New York City to look safe.
Yeah, I've worked plenty of homicides where never saw it on the news. Never, ever saw it on the news. One of the things that's interesting when it takes you a little while to build up a resistance to seeing that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a rookie, I remember going to a homicide. It was a drug shooting. Guy was shot in the head, and he's dead. And it was a hot day. The squad is there. They're taking pictures of people. They take pictures of the crowd because you never know who's in the crowd.
You're right.
And this is back in the days when they had the big camera and they're click, 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 you know. So I was told I had to stay with the body, and then I had to stay with the detective squad after. And they were very nice to me, the guys. And they said, okay, kid, they said, we're going to keep you with us. I know we're going to get you something to eat later, but you got to eat whatever we give you. I'm like, okay. I just saw a guy, you know, his head blown off. So when we finished, they take me back to the detective squad. They go, oh, lunch will be here or dinner will be here in about a half an hour. Dinner comes. They toss me a tin. I open it up. Calamari marinara. And they go, kid, you better eat it all. Second homicide I was with them, they got me lo mein. You know. So what happens? You start after all, no matter how bad things are, and people get upset when they see us, but you'll see the cops go, what are we eating today? I don't know. You want pizza? You want Italian? You want Chinese? What do you want?
Right.
It got to the point where by the time I was a sergeant on patrol, if there was a homicide, I had so many things that I had to do. You'd like to feel bad for the person that was killed, good, bad, or indifferent, but I have so many things I have to do in the first 5 minutes that you just have to go into your mode. So the first 5 minutes, I walk into an apartment, there's a dead body there or something, and there's blood, and there's, you know, it was obviously a gunshot, and there's a trail of blood coming out. You have to go, okay, I need these people here, these people, I need the squad, I need a helicopter, this, that, the other thing, and you need all these things. And what I used to do is I used to cheat a little bit. I would hold off on the radio for about a minute, letting them know what I had, because they're going to catch who did this anyway.
Right.
So if I stole for 60 seconds, it's okay. Because in that 60 seconds, I would make sure that my crime scene was very, very big. Because you can always make it smaller. You can't make it bigger.
Right.
So I would make sure it's as big as possible, and I would make sure I had cars and barricades and everything where I wanted. And then I would take money out of my shirt, and I would grab one of the cops, and I go to Dunkin' Donuts. And you'll laugh. I'd say, go to Dunkin' Donuts. Who's the duty captain today? Because the captain was normally going to come and yell at me. So I would ask who the duty captain was, and I kind of knew in my head how they liked their coffee. You know, you remember. So send the guy out. Okay, it's this guy. It's light and sweet. Just hurry up, get down there and get back. Gets down there, gets back. Now the captain comes from wherever he's coming from, because they'll have one captain for a large area sometimes for the day. Mm-hmm. He's about to yell, "Whoa, what's going on?" Here you go. Here you go.
Here you go, Cap. Take this.
Oh, very, very nice. What's going on? Well, these guys are all called. This is all done. Here's my list. Here's your piece of paper. Oh, okay. Very good. And then it calms him down because everything's done. He has his coffee. There's no problems.
Right.
So you know, and to the casual onlooker, that would be like, what's he doing? Somebody's dead there. Yeah, but I've got a zillion things I got to do, and I got to make sure that he's able to do his job. I got to do my job. Everybody's got to do their job. So you have to be the calm guy and just do that.
Thank you very much for your insight on police work. But I want to talk about some wrestling with you now, all right?
Ooh.
Because every time I talk to you, there's always some wrestler you tell me about that I always have to end up Googling because they're way before my time. Your best guess, which year did you become a wrestling fan, and what was your earliest memory of pro wrestling?
Well, my earliest memory of pro wrestling is when I was a little kid. My dad's cousin Nancy, her husband Jimmy, was friends with Bruno Sammartino. And in their house, they had a picture of Bruno with the belt, and Bruno used to go to their house. So Bruno was friends with them. So my earliest memory is of Bruno as a little kid, but not really knowing who he is, but, you know, he was there.
Right.
About 1976, I'm about 6 years old, and we lived in an apartment in the Bronx. We had a one-bedroom apartment. And one Saturday night, I guess we had a black and white TV in the bedroom, the little 13-inch, the color one in the living room. I guess my dad had wrestling on, and I must have woken up because my bedtime was 8 o'clock, but now I'm awake. And I remember two things. One, and I swear it was the Valiant Brothers, but I'm not sure. They were trying to rip somebody's mask off to unmask them. I know, oh, this is cool. And the other thing I remember is superstar Billy Graham coming out and laying down that rap. I had never seen anybody who, other than, you know, in a comic book, I had never seen anybody built like Billy Graham, and I certainly never heard anybody talk like Billy Graham. He came out, started talking that rap. That was it, man. I was like, oh, look at this. This is cool.
You've been hooked ever since.
Oh yeah, and then anytime I could watch it after that. My mom didn't like it. She said, "Oh, you shouldn't be watching that." My dad liked it, and anytime I could watch it, I'd watch it. And after that, I'd see a little bit of Bruno, see a little bit of Superstar, and then go forward to the early '80s. Now you got Jimmy Snuka's in there, and you got Don Morocco, and you got Valentine, and then the VCR gets invented, and then that's when it starts getting interesting. Because now everybody's trading tapes.
So you were a tape trader back in the day.
Before there was this, and I could give you all that knowledge.
Cell phones.
I had to go get it all myself. I had to go begging guys for tapes. I had to ask for tapes on Jerry Lawler. Anybody had that? Tapes on anything I could get from anywhere.
I was talking
the magazines, the aftermags.
I was talking to somebody, and we were talking about what wrestling was like back in the day when we were growing up, because him and I were born in the '80s, and we were saying that if you missed Monday Night Raw, and you went to school the next day and none of your friends saw it, you didn't know what happened. But today, you instantly knows what happened. You don't have to watch Raw. You can read Raw. You can sometimes read Raw before it even comes on the TV.
But you got to figure, in my day, we had the aftermags, the Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the Wrestling Superstars.
Yep.
I used to read those cover to cover. I would save money out of, other than my comic book money too, I would also save out of my lunch money so I could get, those magazines came out one every week. Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the Wrestlers, Wrestling Superstars, and I forget the other one. And they were like reasonable. They were $1.99 to $2.50 or whatever. The WWF magazine, it was just, that was more like a one big advertisement with cool pictures. But Pro Wrestling Illustrated, you learned the history of wrestling as well. I read that thing cover to cover. You knew they always had classic stuff in there. They always taught you about the old timers. They taught you about the Sheik. They taught you about Mark Lewin. They taught you about Gorgeous George. But you knew what was going on in every territory all around the country. So when I would watch, after Vince started taking over the world, somebody new came in. I was like, oh, I know who that is. Oh, I know who that is too. So it made it a lot more fun. Like when DiBiase came in as the $1 Million Man. Right. Most people in the Northeast, unless you knew that he was the North American champion in the old WWF, you had no clue who he was. Right. Because most kids watch wrestling 4, 5, 6 years, then they're gone. You lose. Right. He walks in, and I'm going, oh, I know who he is, because he'd been all over the South, all over Bill Watts' territory, all over Texas, and he had beaten up everybody, good guy and bad guy. I'm like, this guy's cool. And you knew that first day they brought him in to make him a big star. What was your same with Randy Savage. When they Randy Savage, I knew from seeing the Memphis tapes. Right. Jerry Lawler. So you knew when they brought him in first day. Oh shit, that's that crazy guy from Memphis. When you were watching, well, you could only watch stuff in the Northeast, but when you used to get the aftermags before cable, before the internet, that's how you, like you said, that's how you knew about everything else that was going on in the wrestling world. What was your favorite territory to keep up with? Oh, I'd say Memphis was a big part of it, and I like the AWA because we had WPIX in the city. Right. So once a week, not everybody watched it, but the AWA was on, so you could watch the Gagnes, you could watch Social Slaughter, and I was a big Larry Zbyszko fan, so I could watch Zbyszko, watch him with his nunchucks and all that crazy stuff. But in the magazines, I liked reading about Ric Flair. I liked reading about Dusty Rhodes because you couldn't see that stuff. All the crazy stuff Kevin Sullivan was doing. Now, you've met Kevin Sullivan. Yep. It's nice to put a face to all the craziness. It's nice to be able to sit with that guy and go, oh, I've been reading about you since I was a kid. Yep. It's almost like St. Peter at the gates and he goes, oh, we've heard about you. Oh, So let me make sure I understand this, because for me, I want to paint the picture for people that are in my age group and for your kids and other people that were born and we know the internet and we know like cable TV. So you knew about Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes before you ever seen them on television? Well, Dusty Rhodes used to come up here once in a while because Vince was friends with Eddie Graham. So Eddie Graham used to ship Dusty up here. They'd ship Andre or somebody down there, and Dusty would come up here and do shots. Like Ric Flair came up and did a shot. He wrestled Pete Sanchez at the Garden in 1976, so they could take a look at him. Because Vince McMahon was still on the board of directors for the NWA. Vince McMahon, senior or junior? Senior. Senior was on the board of the NWA till the end. Once in a while, you'd see guys come up. They'd bring guys up, so you'd see that. But most of what you saw here was just what was on WOR, what WWF showed you. You know, guys didn't stay in the WWF 5, 6, 7 years back then. You know, nobody had those long runs. You came, you did your bid, you left. Like in the Bruno era, they brought guys in to feed the Bruno. They built them up. They had the run with Bruno if they were trustworthy. They had the return matches. And then they're gone. Okay, I'm going to go to Minneapolis next, or they'd go down to Watts territory, or they'd go out to Portland for a while. You know, like a Playboy Buddy Rose. They bring him in, they build him up. He wrestles Bob Backlund. He does the program. He leaves. Boom. He's back out to Portland. It was just different. You know, it wasn't until you had, you know, till Vince took over that you had these guys doing programs for years and years and years. Huh. You don't have a guy like Ziggler who's there 10, 12, 15 years. That didn't exist back then.
Right. He would have did his shot and went someplace else.
You would have worn yourself out. They would have got tired of you.
In your opinion, during your tenure of watching professional wrestling, what has changed for the better and what has changed for the worst?
Oh, the athletics are certainly better. The athletics, the presentation is better. I mean, there's a lot of things that are better. I think what's worse is I'm not a big fan of these scripted promos. I think the guys, and I tell this to the guys when we're sitting down, and I've done this with you, when I'm sitting there doing the way I'm going to announce you to bring you to the ring. What's the real you? I want to see the real you inside you. I want you to talk. You know, you come up with your thing. You need to be able to talk. And if you can't talk, you need a manager who can talk. But these overly scripted promos, it's just deadly because then you're not seeing the real person. It's not believable. You got to be believable. If the people believe it, it's that much better. It's almost like Johnny Valentine. Johnny Valentine had a saying, I can't make you believe professional wrestling is real, but I can make you believe that I'm real.
I agree. I don't like the scripted promos because when you go to professional wrestling school, they don't script the promo for you. I mean, I don't know where they teach you a script promo. I guess it's a WWE thing. But when I was in professional wrestling school with the Dudley Boys, it's always the who, what, where, when, why, how. You know, who you are, where you are, how you're going to do it, why you're going to do it, and just tell the story. And, like, the thing that you always say about being yourself, it's like, for me, I always say, like, there's this person that I suppress inside of me because he's not politically correct. Like, that person can't walk around the street. But when I go into a wrestling ring and Tristan Law is on, like, I say some mean things to people that sometimes when I go in the back, I'm like, damn, I can't really believe I told that to somebody. But hey, I got a reaction.
But it works. Look at the couple of nights where you were coming out of the ring and I handed you back the mic and I said, hit him again.
Yep.
And what happened? It worked.
I remember getting hit in the face one night with something because of you.
You had made them mad enough that I could see if I hand you back the mic, it's going to make them just that much madder and they'll come back next time. They'll want to hate you again. I want everybody to go home happy. That's the thing. Win, lose, whatever, you're telling a story. You're telling a story. And it's hard to explain to people. It's like, for people that understand, you don't have to explain. For people who don't understand, no explanation will ever do. Do you ever watch the old Zorro shows, the black and white Zorro shows on Disney?
So Matt, as long as I've ever watched TV, the only thing black and white I watch is The Twilight Zone and I Love Lucy.
Okay. But I'm gonna give you something else to look for.
Go for it.
So Guy Williams from Lost in Space was Zorro. And he does this one episode where Ricardo Montalban is the bad guy. Ricardo Montalban comes into town and he knows Don Diego from when they were in Spain. He knows Don Diego. And he thinks Don Diego is Zorro. And he's going to prove that Don Diego is Zorro. And he's also going to rob the bank in town, but that's irrelevant. Mm-hmm. So, of course, he tries to rob the bank and Zorro stops him from robbing the bank. And all of a sudden, Zorro, the master swordsman, it defeats Ricardo Montalban's character. Now, as Ricardo Montalban is being taken away, Zorro is up in the rafters and he's looking down and he takes off his mask and he goes, it's me. And now Ricardo Montalban is going, Don Diego is Zorro, Don Diego is Zorro. And the cops are all taking him down there and yeah, that's stupid. Nobody believed that. And it worked. And of course, Ricardo Montalban lost. But you know something? That episode is probably one of the more famous Zorro episodes because everybody remembers that watched that. You'd watch it once, you'd remember it forever. When I find it again, I'm going to have to send it to you.
Hey, you. Yeah, I'm talking to you. That shirt you're wearing is so not cool. Why don't you head on over to TristanLawShow.com and get yourself a new shirt. Not only will you be cool, but you'll also be supporting the show. What are you waiting for? Go now and get a hat too while you're at it. Thank me later. We're the show at TristanLawShow.com. I like having you on the show because you're giving me like this old school feel. Like we talked about everything that was old and it's good, but let's talk about you as a professional wrestling ring announcer, because that's what you do. What made you get up one day and say, I'll give this professional wrestling ring announcer thing a try?
This is a long story. We're going to turn the clock back 30 years one more time.
I'll go for it.
Years ago, I used to go to these Herb Abrams UWF shows. They were at the Penta Hotel across the street from Madison Square Garden. I knew Herb. Herb was wacky. I knew him.
Time out. Hold on. I am not going to let you get into the story and you not tell me a story about Herb Abrams.
But I met Herb when I bought tickets to his show. It was weird. To get tickets to his shows, I used to have to send a check out to a Marina Del Rey, California, and then the stuff would be sitting there for me at will call. I don't know what way he was laundering money, but I was sending checks out to California. And my shit was sitting there. When I walked in with my dad and my brother, my stuff was sitting there. I got priority seating. It was great. That place was the perfect storm because other than meeting Bruno as a little kid, I didn't get to meet anybody. I got to meet Bruno there a couple of times. I got to meet so many guys in the business there. But one in particular was George Napolitano. George ran a couple of magazines, very famous photographer. I just wound up hitting it off with him, a guy, John Arisi. John Arisi used to run some of the fan fests in New York, and they introduced me to Larry Sharp because I had told them, I really think I would like to referee. I said, I really like to do that. I said, because I'm a policeman, I really can't be wrestling. I can't get hurt because if I get hurt, I can't work, but I'd like to referee.
Right.
I think it was the second or third time I was at one of their shows. Larry Sharp is sitting there, and George goes, Matt, come over here. I want you to sit with Larry Sharp. And George had smartened me up to some things. They talked to Larry Sharp in 30 minutes, smartened me up to how everything worked, because kayfabe still exists today, but he smartened me up completely. This is how this works. And he says to me, you're going to have to put this on hold. And I said, why? He says, because you're a policeman, you're a probationary policeman, because you're on probation for 2 years. He says, if something happens in that locker room, and I had seen the locker room, he goes, if something happens in that locker room and the guys are using stuff that they shouldn't be using or doing stuff they shouldn't, you're going to have a problem because you're either going to have to do your job or lose your job. Now, Larry could have very easily said, I'd like you to train, come give me $3,000 and I'll train you and I'll get you squared away and you can do whatever you want. But he didn't. And I've always heard over the years people say, Larry Sharp took my money. Larry Sharp did this, did that. He sat me down. He was brutally honest with me and he didn't try to take my money. And he told me, put this on hold for a while. And I put it on hold, but I want to put it on hold for a long while. I had enough fun at those Herb Abrams shows that I got enough exposure, meeting the guys and stuff. Got to hang out with, Terry Gordy and Steve Williams. Got to meet Nikolai Volkov and Paul Orndorff and Bobby Orton and all these guys and get to hang out with Bruno Sammartino. 20-year-old kid, get to hang out with Bruno Sammartino. That's pretty damn cool.
Damn right.
That was nice. Got the Lou Albano, all these guys, B. Brian Blair, all these guys that I watched as a kid. Now I'm getting to see them. I got to meet a young Cactus Jack, but he was Cactus Jack and selling his T-shirts for $10. And I also got to see one weird side of Herb Abrams. He used to give out 2 checks to the guys. Because I was hanging out with George Napolitano and Bill Apter one night, I'm watching him write checks. You either get a blue check or a green check. One of those checks was no good. I don't know which one was which, but let's just say you got the blue check, you could cash it tomorrow. You got the green check,
You got a working check and a shooting check.
One night I'm going to a show, and Mick Foley had been threatening and advertising that he was going to jump off the balcony of the Penta Hotel. He even said to Pro Wrestling Illustrated, I'm going to do a job where I jump off the balcony of the Penta Hotel and go through somebody. So, of course, now we're hoping, this will be the night that he does this. He has an argument with Herb outside, I guess, over money. Herb tried to give him one of those checks. He was like, I'm out of here. And he walked out. There was no Cactus Jack at the show. And everybody was pissed. Everybody's waiting. You mean he's not going to jump off the balcony? No, he's not going to jump off the balcony. So that was my first exposure. So now we'll launch forward and we'll go to about 5 years ago. I'm supposed to take my son Brian to a Northeast wrestling show as Matt Hardy, I think, versus Morrison.
Okay.
The show, it's over in Bethel. First time we're going to Bethel. We've been to plenty of Northeast wrestling shows, but we're going to Bethel. The show gets canceled and he's devastated. Oh, this sucks. He was looking so forward to it, and they canceled the show. Now, I got to find something for us to do. So now I get online. I had seen posters here and there for the ECBW show, but I had never gone to one because they were mostly in Jersey. I'd go to stuff, Westchester or up here, but I had never really gone to any shows. So I see one at the Elks Lodge in Paramus. I said, we'll go. Said to my wife, I'll take him. Didn't really tell Brian where we were going. I teased him, told him I was forcing him to sit and watch a My Little Pony show at some theater. He's like, no, you're a little kid. So we zip down there, and I get there, and the first guy I meet walking in there is one of the fans. They're probably their top ECPW fan is Steve Zaccaro. Steve and his son, they usually hold up signs and stuff, and start talking to him. And Steve's an old-time wrestling fan. He introduces me to Joey G. So now I start talking to Joey G. Oh, where you from? What do you do? You know, where do you work? Where do you use? And so now I hit it off with Joey.
Right.
So we start talking. Watch the show. First night I was there, who was on that show? I think it was Mike 3D was on that show. Craig Stagg. Sonny Kiss was just starting out. Brian actually has a picture of himself and Sonny Kiss from that night. We tease Sonny with the picture once in a while. Drew was on the show. The main event was Andrew Anderson versus Frankie Flo. Dan DeMann was on the show. Him and Kenny were together, but Corey was just starting out.
Right.
Corey fought Mike 3D. And I think Mike 3D blew a quad or something that night trying to pick up Corey.
Oh, Corey Dellinger.
Oh, Corey's a big man.
Oh, yeah.
Big man.
A lot of man.
But it was fun. There was a couple other guys there. Mike Orlando was on that show, actually. If I remember correctly. He was on one of those shows. So we started going. And as we were leaving, Gino Caruso comes up to me and goes, "You've never seen us before." He goes, "So where are you from?" So I'm from up in New York. "Oh, what, did you like the show? Yeah, would you come back?" Yeah, it was fun. I didn't think nothing of it.
Right.
But in the back of my head, I've been trying for years to find a way for the Knights of Columbus to get a charity show going.
Right.
Because the days of making pancake breakfast and selling raffle tickets is over. It's more, I want to do something where I can get the families involved and bring them in. It's good for the wrestlers to work, and it's a good way to get people to come to a community event, and you make money. Michael Lombardi in Northeast Wrestling, when I mentioned it to him probably a year earlier, says, "Well, I need a $10,000 down payment." I said, "For a charity show? You got to be kidding me." I said, "We're trying to make these guys a couple of bucks. They're not going to be able to lay out that kind of money."
Right.
After going to a couple of the shows, I said to Joey G, I said, "Listen, I have this idea I've been working on. I don't know if Gino's interested in something like this." He goes, "Let me go get him." Gino talks to me, tells me what he can do. We put a deal together. It took a little while to get it all together. We do a show, and the show does very well for the size and everything. It just worked out really, really nice. And at the time, there was a different announcer. Mr. Mitchell was the announcer for ECPW up here. James Mitchell.
Yep.
He was the announcer. Having gone to the ECPW shows, I'm looking, the other announcer that you had down in Jersey, I'm not going to mention names, but just didn't. Some people just don't dress nice for that occasion.
Right.
I grew up watching Howard Finkel in that ring, or Jim McHugh before him, and Ken Resnick, and Ken Resnick was like this, and Lance Russell. They had a certain personality, they had a certain way of presenting themselves, and they didn't go into business for themselves. There's a key. The problem you have with a lot of referees and announcers and ring announcers is they go into business for themselves. You're not there to go into business for yourself. You're there to help these guys in the back get over, and you're there to keep the crowd motivated. Those two things. That's it. And look good. So the first show, the show goes well. I keep going to the shows, and I'm, getting to know Gino a little better. I know the guys a lot better now. Now it comes time to do show number 2, a year later.
Right.
Gino says to me, "Well, we don't have a ring announcer." I said, "Okay." He says, "Do you have anybody?" I says, "Yeah, I'll do it." He goes, "Really?" I says, "Yeah, I'll do it." I said, I get a bunch of nice suits. I says, I've done public speaking since I was 20 years old. This is not going to be hard. I ran a bar for a year and a half. I know how to deal with crowds, people, and just not a problem. And in the insurance business, I'm in front of a podium a couple times a month, giving dissertations and talking to people, different events, dances and things I will MC. So I said, this is good.
Right.
But I also realized I've got one shot, because if I screw this up, I'm not going to get to do it again. So of course I made sure I looked good, made sure I had a fresh haircut, you shave nice, you look good. But I also knew that I had to make sure that I didn't screw anything up. So I started using index cards right away.
Smart.
And you see me with my index cards all the time, have my little index card system, and just because this has to go just right. I knew if I screwed this up, I was done. I'd be back sitting on the other side of the fence. And when I was done at the end of the night, Gino was happy. Enrique Havoc goes, "That's my guy." So then I got that spot. So now I was the announcer for the Hudson Valley shows, and which was cool. And you and I, when you were running the shows in Middletown, when you were doing that, we had a good time. It worked.
Yep.
It took me a little while to learn, to get a little better at it, and to make my voice last all night. That took a little learning. And the Metal Maniac, Jeff Miller, was a big help. because he helped break the ice, because he would just come in that ring and he would abuse me a bit. He'd abuse me. But it was good because I said, what do you want to do? He goes, well, I want to do this. Yeah, I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to do that. But him doing that and getting me into the act a little bit brought my tension level way, way down. And Dan the Man was a help with that too, because Dan would come in and yell at me and do whatever and push me in the corner. But that little interaction actually calmed me down more than anything. And you've done that.
I know. I choked you by accident.
Yeah, that was funny. Well, yeah, the only reason DeVito was mad was because you screwed up the tie. I had to leave and go to the bathroom to get myself looking good for the next match. But the thing is, it works, and I don't mind because it's helping you to do what you need to do and to convey your character. Where the real luck came into this is now I'm doing the shows up in the Hudson Valley, and I'm slowly getting better at it. If I watch the earlier stuff now, I don't even want to watch it because I'm like, oh, that was terrible compared to what I've... Because with everything, you progress. I was in Allendale one night, and they were doing a show, and they didn't have an announcer. I think you were wrestling. You might not have been on the card. And they had some girl announcing, and she was so bad. I was a nice kid. She wasn't able to read the names off the list. She didn't play the music right. She completely just destroyed the thing to the point where Anderson comes out and told her that she was horrible. As he's coming to the ring, told her, you're terrible. The next day, guys are chatting on Facebook. Tim Theory was on there, and we're talking about how terrible this was. And I said to Tim, I said, no, not for nothing, Tim. I said, you guys could have called me at 4:00 in the afternoon. I would have just got dressed and come down and did it.
Right.
I said, you got me there anyway. Why not just use me? Why even go through all this? Next thing you know, I'm looking at my phone. My phone goes ding, and it's Gino. He says, can you come down and do TV? Okay. Problem is, there's a little bit of a difference between doing a house show and doing TV.
Yep.
As you know, when we do the house shows, especially like at Highland Mills, I've got contests going on. I've got all kinds of other things going on. And TV, it's
in and out.
Bing, bing, bing. In and out.
Stick to your times, kid.
In and out. In and out to the point where I got to go in and I'm telling the referee, get him out of here. Get him out of here. You know, because they got to roll tape and you can't lose the crowd. And it's just.
Right.
So that took me a few shows to get better at. Sorry about my poodle.
That's all right. I think they're cheering on your story.
Yeah, but so I had to. You have to balance that out. So that took a few shows for me to get better at. Probably the only time I was ever nervous doing that, and only for a second, was the night that Kevin Sullivan was there, because he watched the entire show, which I knew he was watching. But the last taping, the last 3 matches, I get in the ring, and now he's doing commentary, and I'm standing, I'm going, oh. I said, now I've got Kevin Sullivan just staring at the ring. I have to make sure I do a really good job at this because, it's Kevin Sullivan. I was watching him on TV since I was a little kid.
Right.
I was very blessed, very lucky, because when we finished the show and I got out of the ring and went back downstairs into the locker room, Kevin Sullivan actually came up to me, shook my hand, and he said, you did a very nice job out there. That was to get that endorsement from that man is just, and I've gotten that endorsement from Tom Brandy, which is huge too, who's now the Patriot in South Sincere. I actually knew Tom Brandy when I used to talk to him at those Herb Abrams shows.
I did not know that you were so deeply tied into professional wrestling. I honestly, I knew about your police work. I've sat after TV shows asking you questions and, learning about the police work because it still genuinely interests me. Like on YouTube, I like watching body cam videos. I love watching people get tased, especially when they run and they jump over a fence.
But when you're a policeman, you got to have another hobby. A lot of cops, their only hobby is on the weekend. They go shooting, they go paintballing, they go hunting. I'd get these calls. Hey, you want to go hunting? No. Hey, we're going to an amusement park. You want to ride this crazy ride? No, I rode in a police car all week. I don't want to do that. But me and in each place that I worked, every command that I worked in, there was a couple of guys who were just wrestling buffs. Some places there were a lot. Like when I worked at the 5-0 there, and when I worked in the 3-0 Morningside Heights, there were guys on a Monday night. All the guys took their lunch hour that could at 9 o'clock because they were all watching Raw. When I was in the 5-0 as a cop in the late 90s, the NWO was big. I would wear plain clothes maybe 2-3 days a week. It depended on the week. Me and a bunch of guys, we all wore NWO shirts.
That's cool.
And it was great. There was one day that we're out in a van, and we're zipping around, and like that. I wish I had this because then we could have played the NWO theme over the loudspeaker. But I did work with this one guy, Jimmy Coleman, And he used to just take up the mic, and he would hit the mic as we were going down the street and go, wow, 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 wow. So one day we go out and we have to arrest the guy. He's running from the police, and we jump out of the van and we tackle him. I'm wearing an NWO shirt with the motorcycle jacket, the black leather motorcycle jacket, the basic Kevin Nash Scott Hall outfit.
Right.
And so is Jimmy and like two other guys. And we grab the guy, and the guy goes, "What happened?" And he's looking, and we go, "Oh, this arrest was paid for by the NWO or by the New World Order." We come and throw him in the van. And it was great, and we just started laughing. And then guys are doing this,
The NWO sign, yeah, you're going to kill me. You know that, man? You're going to kill me. My face hurts.
Guys are going, we got the guy in the back. He goes, "Man, that was bullshit." Guys are going, "Oh, dun, 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 dun." But you have a bunch of guys. We were all in our 20s. That's what we did. I had so many shirts. I had, if it was warmer weather and I wasn't wearing the leather jacket, I had this cool WCW Public Enemy hockey jersey. Because under that hockey jersey, I had my vest, I had a second gun, I could hide what I was running around, but everybody knew I had the wrestling shirts. So the bad guys didn't, but all the guys I worked with did.
Right.
I had a cool Hollywood Hogan shirt where he's writing graffiti. So if somebody was looking to find me, if I'm out running around in the street and you see a crazy guy running around with a wrestling shirt on, chasing people, oh, there goes Matt. That's what he's doing, So it worked. It worked out, But every place I worked, there was a couple of guys. We'd do trips to wrestling shows. We would go. We would get tickets, we'd get tickets to the Garden. A bunch of us would go. We'd go to Nassau. We'd go to the Meadowlands. We would go whenever we could to shows. And one of my partners is still my best friend today. We used to sit in the car to pass the time. There's a lot of downtime in police work, too.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to sit there, and we would we were both big fans of Larry Zbyszko.
Mm-hmm.
And we would sit there and try to come up with angles for Larry Zbyszko if he was to come back. They never brought him back to the WWF.
Right.
They never did because he hit them. I guess he hit them so hard for money after the Bruno angle, they just didn't bring him back. But we used to say, man, if they brought Larry back with the nunchucks, do you know what he could do with this guy and he could do with that guy? And we always used to say, if you could have put Zbyszko and Piper in a program, what would that do? Oh my God, who would be the face? Who would be the heel? Let them just kill each other. That's how we passed the time, coming up with angles. Well, and then the dirt sheets also passed around in the station house. The Dave Meltzer dirt sheets would pass around in the locker room to the guys so there was one guy that used to get them, a guy, Kevin McGevna.
Mm-hmm. He
used to get them. He'd photocopy them, and then I'd sit there in the radio car going through the dirt sheets. It was just, pass the time. Can't think about police work all day.
Fair enough. You drive yourself crazy. But Matt, with that all said, I know somebody in your family wants to step into the ring as a pro wrestler. Tell everyone who it is and how you feel when you first learned that.
My son, Brian, Brian has been a fan of wrestling for as long as we all can remember. I have pictures of him as little as 2 and 3 years old where he'd fall asleep on the floor taking a nap with a wrestler in each hand and a little ring in front of him. So this is all he's wanted since he was little, to be involved in it. And another reason that I wanted to get involved was because if I got involved, I knew I would be able to get him the proper exposure to the business. There's two sides to every business.
Yep.
And I figured it's much better to have him come in and be around the right people, positive people, and get the right start. Because with the right start, you'll have a better finish. Piss poor planning gives you piss poor results.
Facts.
Proper planning gives you proper results. First job I ever gave him to do in wrestling, there's two. First thing I made him do was go around with me stapling posters. He stapled more posters than he had probably ever wanted to remember. Just ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. But that's what you do. You go out, you staple posters. The other job I gave him to do was carry Greg Valentine's bags. I took him into Greg Valentine up in the Highland Mills. Mm-hmm. I said, "Hi, Greg, this is my son, Brian. Anything you need him to get you something to drink, eat, this, that. I don't care what it is. You ask Brian, he will do it." And that's how you do that. Mm-hmm. And what made me do that is, remember, Haku used to carry Andre the Giant's bag.
Mm-hmm.
You got to think of that. That's how you start. And I always have him doing stuff. I made him set up chairs.
Yep.
I made him help the guys with the ring. He helped set up the audio. He rings the bell. He started out as the timekeeper doing the sound. I wanted him to do every single job that there is before he set one foot in that ring and did anything physical. Because two things. Number one, nobody can say he hasn't paid his dues. He's been paying his dues since he's 13 years old.
You're right.
He still has a lot more to pay, but you know what? But the thing is, he understands what's expected of him.
Right.
He also earned the respect of some of the guys, and he learned how to respect the guys. All the protocols, you got to shake everybody's hand in the locker room, keep your mouth shut, you listen. And where else is he going to go that when a larger star comes in, he gets to sit and listen? I mean, he got to sit for an hour and listen to Kevin Sullivan. He got to sit with Tito Santana one night. Tito Santana helped him with his homework one night.
Yeah, because Tito Santana's the teacher.
Yeah, and Tito sat with him for a half an hour doing his homework with him. Ricky Reyes could have gone home one night. He spent an hour. He spent an hour with Brian going over protocol and listening to people, know what to do and how to do. Where else was he going to get to sit with, a Dan Severn?
Yep. That was all the same night, actually.
Yeah. I mean, but he's got to sit with Valentine. He got to listen to Metal Maniac a lot. That's, but, and Drew and you, and, there's different guys that have sat with him and just gone over stuff. You're not going to get that education just anywhere. Gino has been tremendous with him.
Because I remember when he first told me that he wanted to learn wrestling, I said, kid, I'll give you your first match, but, I'm not going to put you over. And he just started into school, and I'm so mad that I wasn't there to see it, but I'm championing him because you never know that he'll be able to live the dream and he could be on a billboard for WrestleMania 50 in MetLife.
It's a long road.
What's the best piece of advice you've given him since he wanted to get into the wrestling business?
Do whatever Gino tells you to do. Listen to the guys, learn, stay away from the guys you need to stay away from, hang around with the guys you need to hang around with. There's certain guys that you shouldn't hang around with. No names getting mentioned, but there are certain people that you shouldn't hang around with. There are certain people that are, and I can say this because I've watched all the guys enough. 99.9% of the guys are, some guys are careless. Some guys are dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
You know that. You've been doing enough shows.
Yep, I've been in the ring with a lot of them.
And what I basically told him is if you're working with a guy and you don't like one of his moves or you don't think he's going to be careful with you, don't do it.
Nope.
Don't do it. You tell him, I'm not doing that spot. I'll put you over, but I ain't doing that spot. I told him, lay down, put your pinky on the rope, get counted out, and get paid. Do what you're told. But don't do that spot.
We've learned so much about you, Matt, doing this whole entire thing, but here's what I want to know about you. Who is Matt Lynch?
Oh, that's a toughie because I've done so many different things. I'm just me, but you know what? Every day is a crapshoot. Every day you don't know which version you got to be, I always say that the NYPD was the greatest acting job I ever could have had. It was. If you want to learn to be an actor, you want to really learn how to be an actor, go become a policeman in New York City. You'll learn. You'll learn to be very adept. So I basically say I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky guy, a pretty reasonable guy, as long as you don't make me mad. But I'm just me. And then my advice to everybody is just be you. Just be genuine and be yourself.
That's it. Always be the purest form of yourself.
Smile, be good to people, always forgive. Don't forget, but always forgive.
What's next for Matt Lynch?
I'll tell you, future's a big place. I mean, I have my business. I enjoy spending time with my family. The only other thing I think I would want to do in wrestling, I mean, I love the behind the scenes stuff. I would love at some point to be able to book because I think I would be able to put stuff together nice for guys. Not the matches. You guys have to put the matches, but the who's, what, and where. That I know I could do because I used to manage people. So managing people and dealing with personalities, I'm very good at. The other thing I would probably enjoy, I'd love to manage. I would love to manage because I know that I could do J.J. Dillon.
Don't tell me that.
Nobody could do Bobby Heenan, but I could do J.J. Dillon.
Don't tell me that.
I could do John Tolos.
We're going to have to talk about some things, Matt. We're going to have to talk about some things.
That's probably the bucket list thing right there,
I do, though. One of my aspirations and my goals is to run my own professional wrestling company. I want to run one in New York. I want to have my own school. Granted, I don't have, much credibility to say, hey, I can run a wrestling school, but I feel that I can be a great community college of the professional wrestling school. I won't be a Harvard, but I'd be a good community college, and I'd be able to let guys come in and learn the beginning of the craft and maybe go off to Harvard or professional wrestling school and learn things. But I want to run shows in New York as well, too. So, God willing, I would love to, have you as my booker. It's you and somebody else that I would love to have as my bookers, and you guys just make the shows happen, and, we just market in and just have a great time. And that's one of my goals, and I'd love to use you one day when that happens.
Well, the way I look at it is everybody on that card, guys are, because I hear it, guys are, I got to get over. If you book it properly, everybody will get over in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody can contribute. Everybody just has to realize that there's a different way that you have to contribute.
That's true.
That's it. Some guys get mad. Well, I don't want to have to lose to this guy. Yeah, but your job today is to make your job today. Let's use the Meadowlands Monster, for example.
Uh-huh.
And you tell the guy, your job today is to make the Meadowlands Monster look fantastic. Now, twice, I'll pick two instances. The first guy, I won't mention the name. Guy was told, go in there, make him look good. And all that guy did afterwards was bitch and moan and cry and complain that he had to make this man look good. But the guy needs to look good. He's a monster.
Right.
The second guy, I will mention his name because he did what he was supposed to do, and that's Love Jones. Because Mike told me after the match, he says, they told me, make him look good. Oh, I'm sorry, with Mike, it was with John Tella, though. So go in there, make him look good, but get your character over. And what did Mike do? He went in there, he did his job, and he did it. Because I talked to him before, and he goes, what do you think? I said, just do what you're supposed to do. What I love about Love Jones, you could tell that man anything. He goes in there, he does his job to the best of his ability. Win, lose, or draw, it doesn't care. He does the job because he sees the bigger picture down the road. And that's the difference, Baker. Don't bitch and moan because somebody's going to go back to the promoter and tell him you bitched and moaned.
That's 100% facts.
In the police department, you don't bitch and moan because somebody's going to go back and tell the boss.
And then when the boss hears, the boss not going to be too happy.
And then when the boss
it.
hears, you're done. You're toast. Then you don't see the guy for a year and you go, gee, I haven't seen you in a while. I wonder why.
He's probably working like in the far side of Queens or Staten Island where nothing happens.
Yeah.
But Matt, I definitely want to thank you so much for being on the show today.
No, thanks for having me. We can talk all night.
I mean, we could. I mean, we got to leave something for next time. But tell everybody how they can get in contact with you if they want to sign up for the insurance if they lived in New York.
Got to live in New York. You have to be a practical Catholic, and you can join the Knights of Columbus. For anybody interested in the Knights of Columbus, you go to knightsofcolumbus.org. It's KOFC.org. They have a wonderful website, oodles of stuff on there. Anybody that needs to see me, it's matthew.lynch@kofc.com. So it's matthew.lynch@kofc.org. So you can email me there.
And how do they find you on social media if they want to find you? Twitter, Instagram?
I'm on Facebook. Now, my business, I don't advertise on Facebook. My Facebook is my Facebook. That's my wrestling world over there, But you can get me on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn under Matthew Lynch.
Well, very well. Ladies and gentlemen, this was Matt Lynch. He is a ring announcer, and he is a Knights of Columbus member and former police officer. Matt, I want to thank you so much for being here tonight. And everybody, don't go anywhere because I'm going to give you my thoughts in this interview, and I'm going to tell you who's going to be here with me next week. So don't go anywhere. Keep it locked to The Tristan Law Show. Hey there, it's your pal Tristan Law. Do you find yourself skipping past these evil advertisements every week? Well, you should feel lucky to skip past this one because I have the solution for you. Run on over to patreon.com/Tristan Law Show and free yourself from the evil grip of advertisements. Choosing the ad-free support option, not only will every episode be ad-free, but you'll get every episode days earlier. But if you love the ads here in the Tristan Law Show, there's an option on Patreon to simply support the podcast. There's something here for everyone. Head on over to TristanLawShow.com for more info. Welcome back to the Tristan Law Show, and I am Tristan Law. I am looking for more bands and brands to work with. We can play your music or advertise for your band or brand. No one is too big and no one is too small. Here at the Tristan Law Show, size does not matter. Visit the contact form at tristanlawshow.com or send an email directly to tristanlawshow@gmail.com. Did you enjoy this episode? I sure as hell did. As I said during the interview, I always wanted to become a police officer, and man, I love police shows. I loved Matt's stories. Most of his stories felt like they were pulled right out of the movies. But I'll tell you this, after getting to know Matt over the few years, he's a good guy, he's a good father, and an excellent family man. His 18-year-old son Brian and I are friends, almost like an older brother, younger brother thing, except I'm the way older brother, and that's all right. Brian is the one that Matt talked about who is getting into the professional wrestling business and has been training. Brian has a passion for pro wrestling, and while he hangs out with me, I feel like it's my duty to make sure he stays on the right track. The relationship between Matt and Brian is what I'd like to have with my kids one day. Maybe I'll introduce you to Brian. One day. Thank you so much for the time, Matt, and I'll see you soon. Next week's episode is going to be fun. Have you ever wanted to create a YouTube channel? Or do you currently have one and want to get a lot of subscribers? Well, what happens when you get to a certain number of subscribers? Next episode, I'm going to introduce you to my friend Dave Lee, the curator. You know, I don't think Dave's ever been called a curator, but he is the host of Dave Knows Wrestling and Dave Knows Comics, both on YouTube. If it wasn't for him and Stephen James, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. I promise you that. Next episode is going to be fun and informative, but you have to do some homework. Go check out Dave Knows Wrestling or Dave Knows Comics on YouTube. It all depends what you like. Prior to our next episode, and tell Dave that I sent you. I need a favor from you. Yep, I'm talking to you. Share this episode with somebody else, because I don't want this to be the thing that you do. I want this to be the thing that we do. Welcome to a random stranger. Tell them to listen to the Tristan Law Show. Yeah, they may think you're crazy, but who cares what other people think? Fine. If you're worried about being judged, go on over to tristanlawshow.com and at least buy a t-shirt. People will think that you're really cool. Rate the Tristan Law Show 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and leave a review, please, because reviews mean a lot. Whichever podcast platform you're using to listen, please subscribe to get notified when new episodes drop. The best part is that it's free. Learn more about myself in the Tristan Law Show by typing tristanlawshow.com in your internet-enabled device for more info. I've been waiting for you next week. I'm Tristan Law, and this is the Tristan Law Show. And until next time, adios.